I'm Jeremy Boudinot, growth advisor here with Cam Pritchard, founder and CEO of SpotsNow. And today we are going to break down meta ads versus podcast ads, the benefits, the challenges with each channel, where to spend your money, how to spend it. Cam, super excited to have you on, man.
So excited. And before we dive in, like let's say the honest truth. A lot of money is spent on meta ads and not much money on podcasts. So why would you even bother considering podcasts? Like, what are you like, in the Wild West? Do you want to roll around as a cowboy?
It's a great question, man. But we've seen influencer marketing has become a very big thing in the last few years. Podcasts, ads, effectively an extension of influencer marketing. So really not that Wild West anymore, if you think about it. So, but yeah, like you said, a lot more money going to meta ads right now. But podcast ads do offer a lot of value, man. And you're the expert on that. So I'm excited to have you in to discuss.
Well, I think you've run more meta ads than me.
Fair. Cool. All right. So we're going to dive in here. Like, this message is for anyone who's a marketer, again, who is thinking about advertising on these channels. So our first topic is attention versus trust. So the biggest distinguisher probably between these two channels is attention versus trust. Can you kind of talk about what separates meta and podcasts in this regard?
Well, I think, like what is very valuable about meta is that you can get in front of an audience very quickly, right? With podcasts, you can get in front of an audience, but it takes a little bit more time. Now, is that a problem? Maybe, maybe not. So meta is phenomenal for running ads quickly, but the problem is you're competing for attention. You have to hook someone really, really quick, and everyone's advertising in that space. So there's a lot of what we say and blindness because everything's flashing, etc., and there's no real relationship between the advertiser and the audience.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Like when I run meta ads, we're basically running ads trying to get in front of people, trying to get quick clicks, trying to capture people who might be interested and just let them know they exist. Whereas the podcast ads I've run in the past were tied to like various initiatives we were running, and we're focused more on like, okay, we're going to rely on this host being an expert in this space and really getting people to buy into what we're selling, right?
Right. So meta ads, it's interruption marketing, right? It's interrupting you. You're watching some really funny video in your reels or something like that, and then goodness knows something pops up, and you're like, oh gosh, but maybe I'm interested, maybe not, etc. And so you're playing with high volumes, less relational. You're not going to probably build high trust with your audience and high lifetime value through this.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I think meta ads, you're getting the word out, but podcast ads, you're building the trust while getting the word. It's a best of both worlds sort of situation. So makes sense. It makes sense to also layer on podcast ads on top of meta ads so you can have that affinity. When they see the meta ads, they're more likely to buy, right?
Well, 100%. And so it's not should you do one or the other. If you layer on podcast ads, you're going to take that trust, and then that's going to be able to convert more meta ads as well. And we see we see this play out very often in the data.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so let's talk about our next topic, which is clicks versus conviction and how you kind of optimize one channel versus another. So talk to me about that, Cam. What is that distinction of clicks versus conviction?
Yeah, I think meta, you have someone's thumb on the screen so they can click the offer quickly. That's good, right? But then again, it's interruption marketing. You don't have trust. And so the conversion's likely going to be lower because, it hasn't come from someone that you consider as a friend, you built rapport with, etc. Whereas podcasts, they really drive up the belief, they warm the audience, and then they're able to convert the audience. A lot of times when they listen, but then much often it's after. It's like, hey, I was listening to that ad when I was on my drive home, and actually I really need to buy that product. I haven't really thought about this particular product before, but that actually does solve my problem, and I'm now convinced, so I'm going to go and do that.
It makes sense. Like it's like you're enhancing your legitimacy usually through podcast ads too. Whereas Meta, it's kind of hard to do that unless you have like a celebrity or something like advocating for you in the creative of the ad. With podcasts, you're getting this host that's already a trusted sort of person in the audience's life talking about your product, right?
Yeah, and I think like maybe the third point is like, okay, well, let's talk about results. Yeah, so results are obviously probably the most important thing because if you're a business, you want to get conversions, you want to get revenue. Meta, it's very hard to get good. You have to spend a lot of money and a lot of experimentation. There's infinite ways you can do creative. Whereas with podcasts, there's sort of a formula. You get the host in, you leverage their trust, you make them personalize the ad and product, you send them the product beforehand, and you can get really, really good return on ad spend. And I think when you really look at the data and what a well optimized podcast campaign can get, it can blow Meta out of the water. There's very few companies out there that are like killing it with Meta. Whereas in podcast, there's companies that have gone in, they've figured it out, and they've got this huge advantage where a lot of their competitors haven't been looking. Because audio is kind of weird, right? It's different. You need to figure it out, etc. And obviously, we've created SpotsNow to make this easy. It's turnkey and off the shelf as much as possible, and we guide you through and educate you as you go. So as a marketer, you can actually hit those kinds of returns that you should be hitting if you do it right. And at the very least, even if you don't hit those returns for some reason, you are able to test quite quickly because the cost of you not getting into the right ad channel could be the difference of tens to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, 100%. I'll say like another thought I have is like I remember like there was a read for 8 Sleep, which like they're a really premium mattress brand. And it was done by Bill Simmons, who's a podcaster I listen to. I'm a big sports fan. So I listen to this guy, every one of his podcasts, and he had this long talk about 8 Sleep and how it's helping him sleep better than he's ever have and blah blah. And if I that versus me seeing like an 8 Sleep ad on Meta that I'm gonna quickly scroll through. It's a world of difference. You know what I'm saying? I cannot imagine 8 Sleep out on Meta ever impacts me or me even remembering it the way I remember this Bill Simmons read. So just there's a lot of that recall for later that you're talking about. That's a big thing. I think with your distinction between the two channels. And then I think another thing too is the tracking aspect. We're talking about like audio pixels being a relatively new thing. And I think everyone loves Meta because you can sort of get that direct attribution tracking, but that's now possible with podcasts too, right?
Right. Yeah. Now you can do it with podcasts as well. So you can see the dollars in and the dollars out very simply. And it's quick, it's like a copy paste of the code on your website.
That's huge because I know no one wants to spend a lot of time having to figure out tracking the attribution on their website.
Yeah. And speaking of time, look, like we've done this whole podcast advertising manually. It takes a lot of time. I remember that when we did our first ad, it took us 3.5 weeks from start to finish. That's 3.5 weeks that a marketer doesn't have. Now, obviously, they're not just sitting around trying to do set up one podcast ad, but that's the duration it takes to go and set up the creative, go back and forth with the host, the network, send the product, all of that stuff. With Spots Now, you can literally do it in like, time myself recently, but I'm pretty sure you can get it done in a few minutes. You add a few shows to cart, you filter in the right way, you can build your right media plan, and it's kind of changed the game to lower the barrier to entry to podcast advertising.
That's a great point because when I was running podcast ads a few years ago for Next Steve, I was having to reach out to the shows and come up with the creative, and then we were like tracking all the stuff, and it was all disparate and spaced out. Whereas now with Spots Now, you can run it just the way you run your meta ads, where you're launching creative that quickly, and it's going out fast, and you can actually track all the results in one place.
Right. And there's all kinds of like gotchas, when you're doing podcast advertising, we've kind of built into the platform. So the first is like actually knowing what a good price is. Because if you're paying too much, then you've got to be able to return that money. And so you need to understand that. And then just little things like looking at the ad load, like making sure there's not too many ads on on the show that you're advertising in. You can look around at competitors, see what the shows that they're advertising on successfully, and really get up to speed quickly.
I love that aspect of spots now because, like, I would love to be able to go on to Google Ads and see what exactly are my competitors all bidding on. What's their overall bidding strategy? You can basically do that with spots now. You can see, like, okay, they're after these podcasts, and you can sort of map a strategy around those sort of audiences that are reaching, where they really invest in money, and then go after like maybe related shows they're not on, things like that. So that's an approach,
Jeremy,
right?
marketers spend so much money trying to get data on their competitors.
Mm.
Like it is wild. And what's very cool about podcasts is all open source, right? You can listen to an episode, etc. Now it's very difficult to aggregate that and get the insights. But on SpotsNow, we basically take it to you, put it on your kitchen table, and we say, hey, look, this is the recipe. Now you just need to cook.
I love that. I love that, like, to, like, being able to actually have a recipe instead of just trying to make it up on the fly, which unfortunately many marketers have to do. Let's talk about reset versus compounding. Here's another key difference you sort of called out. So talk about reset versus compounding with Meta versus podcasts.
Yeah, well, I think with meta ads, you run them for a set duration, or should I say, and that's the results. Whereas with podcasts, you run ads, and if they're baked into an episode, which is pretty common, where like the ad lives in that episode forever, you see sales. You're gonna wake up a year from now and you might see some sales. That's pretty cool. Then I think like with podcasts, you're there in these episodes for 60 seconds, and there's a good gap between the episodes that you're advertising on. You're kind of building this relationship over time, and you see these compounding results where people are actually telling their friends about it. My buddy Huberman, by the way, they don't know Huberman. They just listen to him all the time.
Right.
He says that this is the best. And they go and tell their friend as soon as when a mattress comes up, this 8 sleep is one that people throw around. And so you're not going to get this off meta ads very commonly. And we know that word of mouth is probably the hardest thing to possibly measure, but it's one of the most powerful things in marketing that can transform a brand.
Yeah, I love that. So think about, you're going to keep seeing results from things you spent money on a year ago with podcast ads, which is exciting, right? Because people, it's on demand. People can listen to it whenever. So that's exciting.
And you've convinced that audience member to tell their friends through the host if you've done well.
Great stuff so far, Cam. So talking about, like, when does Meta win as a channel? Like, when should you be investing in Meta, and when should you be investing in podcasts?
Meta, you're gonna get speed, you're gonna get fast learnings, and you're gonna be able to drill down to who you think your audience is. That is valuable. You need to be there. You need to be testing it, and you need to make it work. But it's a mathematical equation at the end of the day. If you can't get the return on ad spend that you need from Meta, or the CPAs that you need, then you got to look at a better channel. Now, on top of that, probably the right way to frame it is you can get X returns from Meta quickly, but you want to maximize the amount of revenue you can make for every dollar spent. And so if you're not looking around at other channels and testing them quickly, then the opportunity cost is massive, which we've touched on. So Meta, you need to do it. You need to get fast feedback, but at the end of the day, it's a numbers game that you gotta nail. And this is where podcast comes in. You are going to build a very, very strong relationship with your audience. You're going to get into these like almost like cult-like communities where people are like very dialed into a host, and that host is coming out with a recommendation about the 8 sleep. It's a mattress, right?
Right.
Yeah, the mattress has changed their life. And then you actually realize that, oh, that's kind of what I should be telling my friends as well when they're waking up feeling like they were tossing and turning too much. So you're building strong lifetime value. You're getting in front of these niche audiences you need to get in front of, but you're priming them for the most amount of spend you can get out of them. And if you do it well and you're strategic, and SpotsNow has basically built an environment to help you be very successful, that there can blow your other advertising channels out of the water if you do it correctly.
Yeah, I think about like, people who invest in Google ads and SEO. I mean, the idea is you're paying for ads, but you also, if you're like the number one search on page one of search, you get that compound effect of like people see the ad, they also see your organic search result. You look like you're done. When you're running meta ads, it's a short term thing, get in front of people right now. But like if you're running podcast ads over time, they're hearing about you, hearing about you, hearing about you from reliable sources, from people they trust. All of a sudden you're going to see the lift across all of your ad spend because now there's an affinity for you. They know who you are. You're legitimate. You're everywhere. You're credible. You're perceived as a leader in the space, and they're going to trust you, and they're going to hear your message more and your value prop more. They're going to want to buy. So I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of like, if you want compound results over time, it's kind of like SEO. You invest up front, but over time, like you're going to get that long tail benefit big
Yeah.
time.
And look, like we built a platform in the podcast space because it works.
Yeah.
This is a very exciting channel. It is undervalued. People don't know what they're doing. We've lowered the barriers, basically given you the keys now so you can be super successful and you can get all the data you need from competitors to see how to inform your influencer strategy and marketing spend. In fact, we were just talking to one of the brands that we've been working with, and he's now gone and he has taken a lot of these learnings and informed all of his Meta and Google ad campaigns in line with what we learned.
Love it, man. And you guys, your clients were seeing what, 4.5x ROAS typically on
Well, I
campaigns you're
mean,
running?
like it depends on it depends on the type of business and what the goals are, but I think the way to say it is that with podcasting, you can see 3 to 5x return on ad spend if you execute a well optimized campaign. Given you're in the right audiences, you're the right brand for the channel. But maybe if you're selling rockets, maybe it might not be the best channel for you, but there's a lot of categories and industries that can outperform.
I mean, the biggest thing, like you said, you've removed all the barriers. SpotsNow has removed the barriers because that was the hard part of podcast advertising. You had to get in touch with the host, you had to negotiate, you had to come up with the creative, you had to launch, you had to figure out how you're going to test it, measure the results. You guys enable people to do that all in one place now, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I love the hotel tonight aspect. So if you want to book a last minute spot, like you get a great deal on the hotel. With Hotel Tonight, you can do that with Spots Now too. You guys have open inventory where people can get great deals on spots.
It's beautiful, right? Like you can get a low cost testing, meaning that you can test on more with more influencers, and then you can build up the strategy that works. And then through the platform, you can build relationships with those shows that you love that are converting really well, and you can scale them up, and everyone wins. The show, the publisher, they get an awesome product that they can promote. They've got very very loyal leaned in audience that you can basically funnel into your product and then you're growing revenue,
Yeah, I love that.
which we love.
We love it. If you're a marketing agency, you want your clients to love you. If you're a demand gen leader, a brand marketer, you want to get promoted, get a raise, or get a bonus. This is the move for 2026, right? So, which we all want. We all want that. So, yeah, great stuff, Cam. Anything else to leave the listeners with before we go?
I think head to Spots Now, put a media plan together. Super simple. Just plug your website in and see what shows it spits out, and do some high level research and run your first campaign. I mean, it's we're here to support. Just hit us up if you need anything. But the goal here is to open up new revenue for companies, get in front of their niche audiences that are super passionate, and help them grow and grow the world through this.
That's it, man. Thanks, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Check out spotsnow.io. Connect with Cam on LinkedIn. He's a wealth of knowledge. And we'll see you for the next video.